Shalom, shalom. This week's Parsha is Parshat Mikeitz. And usually I focus in on one point that I like to make, but there are 2 points that I think are very important for us to take away from this week's Parsha nowadays. So let's start with the beginning of the Parsha. Paro has 2 dreams, which are essentially one, as we find out later, and they disturb him. He can't get them out of his head, and he calls all his servants, his necromancers, the advisors, whoever he can to interpret these dreams, because none of them were giving him an interpretation which sat with him, that gelled with what he felt the dreams were trying to tell him. And he wasn't getting over it. And so the cupbearer felt like he had no choice but to fess up, seeing Paro's agitation. And he came and he told him about Yosef, who had interpreted both his dreams and also the baker's dreams, and how they had been spot on. And that maybe they can help maybe that Yosef can help Paro. So they, of course, rushed him out of the prison, cleaned him up, brought him before Paro. Now, here's where I find it gets very interesting, because Paro tells him exactly his dreams and he asks Yosef to interpret them. And Yosef says, Beladai, it's not in my hands. I cannot interpret your dreams, which must have right away put Paro's face down into like, what? Nobody's going to be able to interpret it. But then he followed up with, but it is in the hands of God. And he was the one who will tell what shalom Paro, what will be with Paro, by interpreting these dreams. Now, a lot of people focus in on the fact that this is a great point of modesty for Yosef, who was a brilliant man at this point. He had had success after success in these type of things, and his head could have been blown out of proportion, and he can be like, yeah, I interpret dreams. I've done it a million times. I'm always right. He didn't do that. He diminished his part in it and said it's all in the hands of God. Now, this is a great attribute of his, and people focus on that, and that's the Mila, that's the greatness of Yosef, always understanding that everything that is his talents and abilities comes from God. Now, this is very true, no small thing. But there's another point that I feel like people neglect to mention. And if you think about it, here he comes to the Pharaoh of Egypt. Now, a Pharaoh of Egypt is deemed, in his own eyes especially, to be the god of the people. That he's the one who understands, who knows what's for the welfare of the people. He is the one and only, really. And now for Yosef to come to him, which is considered this little, Jewish. He wasn't Jewish at the time. He was an Ivri from a small tribe, comparatively speaking, about Egypt, And here he comes from this small family, and he's going to come and tell Paro that there is this other God, a greater God, and it's in his hands, and that he's trying to tell him that there's acknowledging a greater force than you, and then he'll interpret the dream. Pause. And by doing this, really he put his life on the line by doing this, what we would call Kiddush Hashem, by mentioning, not caving into what he believed, not saying, he didn't have to mention God. He could have said, tell me and I'll try. And in his own head had a little prayer, God help me, to interpret this. I can't mention you, because if I mention you, I might get slaughtered, but help me with this. But he doesn't do that. He comes out straight away, firm in his belief in God to be the one and only who is able to foresee the future, see what these dreams mean, tell Paro what will be with him. And he took a huge chance. This was an act of bravery, an act of bravery. And I focus in on it very much today, because it's really, really hard for the Jewish nation, who we believe in our God, we believe is the one true good God, who is in charge of everything, and not people. And not people in these scary places who think they can run things, and they have the power. There is a force behind them. And we put our lives, Jewish people, online every day by wearing a kippah, wearing the Star of David. This is a proclamation of what our beliefs are. And by doing so, it's a scary thing. And I think I got great strength from seeing what Yosef did. And not only did he do that, and then it not only worked out okay. Paro was like, okay, yeah, no, tell me what the dream means, And then he's there. He's put second to the king. He's taking care of everything. He's successful. He manages to save Egypt, not just Egypt, but the other nations from famine by storing all the years of surplus. And then when his brothers finally come down, he not only that, he doesn't let his years and years of being with Egyptian people influence how he thinks or what he does and how he does it. And he's one lone guy. And why do I say this? When they came the second time, finally, when they were able to bring Binyamin back, and he seats them around the table, and he has his servants go and prepare meat, which was a detestable thing in their eyes. And it said that the Egyptians could not even sit at the same table as them, watching them eat meat. It was despicable. And Yosef knew this, and he could have been, like embarrassed, shy away, not be someone who is engaging in this kind of activity and feast, which he knew would be looked down upon. And most people in a position of power today, you'd think, the same thing. They cave all the time to public opinion. They're afraid to do and act in all sorts of ways, in any way that will make people look askance at them. But Yosef, still, he did. This is what I'm doing. And he did it, no apologies. And I just love that, admire that, and wish that our whole nation could be like that, to be fearless in this way. But there's my second important point that I want to make that I think ties into this point, because it's complicated. It is complicated about asserting our beliefs and our values and our ways and our culture. And there was a lesson, I think, that Yaakov gave to his sons that is vital for us, especially in these days. And that is, when the famine started and everybody was lacking food and everybody was going down to Egypt to try to get something to eat, some bread to eat, Yaakov said to his sons, why are you making us conspicuous? Why should we be conspicuous? Go down and get food also. Meaning they hadn't been starving, but everyone was going, and they had surplus, they had food, they had means. But you don't make the surrounding people jealous. When everybody's going through suffering, when everybody's going through an ordeal, you don't be there showing off like how well that you're doing. And I do think that this is a problem. There's a culture nowadays, it's that's affected everybody, all peoples, is that on social media is, look at this, my trip, my car, my whatever. And unfortunately, people do well, and their things are flaunted, their brand names, their cars, their huge houses, all these things. It makes the people conspicuous. It's important, if God blesses us with a good life, to have a sense of modesty, and to live in a way that doesn't incur hatred and jealousy. Definitely not to flaunt things, that's for sure, not to flaunt things, but to maintain a sense of modesty throughout the whole thing, throughout your blessings, because if you don't, it will incur great hatred. I think we've unfortunately fallen into that trap. I think that around the world where the Jews have been successful, it's not looked kindly upon. It is not. And I think we need to be more modest. At the same time, be modest about our means, but be proud our values, to maintain good values. And that is also not to get into materialism too much, because that is not a good value, that is bad. But to maintain our true values, to make a name for ourselves with chesed, gmilut chasedim, all sorts of good things we do for other people, to make society better, to make ourselves better, to make the world better. And then we can wear that Star of David proudly. Then we can pronounce our God proudly, because we're going to be a banner for his ways. And then we can declare with signs, symbols, words, everything, who we are and what we stand for, and not be afraid, and hopefully be blessed. With that, I wish you a very safe Shabbat Shalom.